Imagine being in your home, comfortable and safe, believing that your neighborhood is a peaceful refuge. But what if the secrets your barriers hide were darker than you could imagine? What would you do if you discovered that evil was closer than you think? The following stories will make you question if you're truly safe, even in the comfort of your own home. Stay with me as we uncover the dark secrets hidden in the quiet corners of your neighborhood. In the quiet suburb of Oakwood Heights, everyone knew everyone. It was the kind of place where doors were left unlocked and neighbors exchanged waves from their porches. But that all changed when a new neighbor moved in next door to Jennifer. His name was Mr. Martin, a man in his mid-50s, who always seemed to keep to himself. At first, Jennifer thought nothing of it, but one evening, as she sat in her living room, she began to notice something strange. Mr. Martin's house was dark, except for the glow of a single lamp in the window. The curtains were always drawn, but there was a strange feeling in the air. It was subtle at first, the soft clicking of what seemed like footsteps moving behind her house late at night. It wasn't a loud sound, just enough to make her feel uneasy. Then the odd occurrences began to pile up. Jennifer would come home after work to find her front door slightly ajar, despite having locked it before leaving. She asked her husband about it, but he shrugged it off. One night, unable to shake the feeling of being watched, Jennifer decided to confront Mr. Martin. She knocked on his door, but there was no answer. She peeked through the window and saw him standing eerily still, staring out into the dark street. His eyes met hers, wide, unblinking. But that wasn't the most unsettling part. Behind him, in the dimly lit room, was a wall covered in photographs of her family. Jennifer immediately stepped back, feeling her heart race. She never spoke to Mr. Martin again. To this day, no one knows what happened to him. The house was left abandoned shortly after, and his whereabouts remain a mystery. Was he watching her for something more sinister? Perhaps. We'll never know. In the quiet town of Maple Ridge, the Robinson family lived a simple, peaceful life. But that peace was shattered one rainy evening when Mr. Robinson heard a knock on the door at exactly midnight. At first, he thought it was a prank, but when he opened the door, no one was there. Confused but unfazed, he shrugged it off. However, over the next few days, the knocking returned, each time at the same time, 12 a.m. It wasn't a single knock. It was a rapid, erratic pounding that shook the entire door. But when he opened it, nothing. Then came the footsteps. Late at night, Mr. Robinson would wake to the sound of heavy footsteps pacing outside his bedroom window. He would rush to the window, only to see nothing but empty darkness. One night, the pounding stopped. Mr. Robinson thought the torment had finally ended, but as he stepped outside, he found something horrifying. A small pile of dirt, freshly dug up, right at the edge of his yard. The next day, he noticed a strange figure standing across the street, watching him. The man was wearing a dark coat, his face obscured by the shadows. When their eyes met, the man didn't move. It was then that Mr. Robinson realized his neighbor, the one who had always been friendly and smiling, had never actually moved in. He had been living in his house, watching from the shadows all along, and perhaps it was he who was knocking on the door. In the small neighborhood of Greenfield, there was a house that everyone avoided. It had been abandoned for years, yet it never seemed empty. The windows were always covered in thick, dark curtains, and the yard was overgrown with weeds and vines. But the strangest part was that every few months, someone would move in. No one ever saw them, and the neighbors never knew who lived there. But the sounds from the house were enough to make anyone question what was really going on. The Wilson family had lived across the street from the mysterious house for years, but one night they heard something they couldn't ignore: loud bangs, like furniture being overturned, followed by muffled voices. Curious, Mr. Wilson decided to investigate. When he walked over to the house, he noticed the front door was slightly ajar. He hesitated but entered anyway, convinced he would find squatters. What he found inside was far worse than anything he could have imagined. The house was immaculate, almost too clean, but there were no signs of life. Then a voice came from the shadows. A whisper, "Get out of here. They'll never leave." He turned to find nothing but empty space. Terrified, he ran out of the house, only to be greeted by a figure standing in the doorway. The same figure that had been standing there for years, never aging. To this day, no one knows who lived there or who or what was haunting that house. But something still lingers in Greenfield, a warning to anyone who dares to approach. These stories are just a glimpse into the terrifying reality that could be hiding behind the walls of your own neighborhood. But the real question is, do you know your neighbors as well as you think you do? Have you ever experienced anything like this? Or perhaps something even stranger? Share your story in the comments below, and remember, stay safe.